So for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to be Katie. So here I am sitting in front of my new Windows 8.1 PC with Office 2013. And I'm going to demonstrate how these applications can help people work better. So I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to open up Outlook, a product that a lot of us open at the beginning of the day and in fact have open for a lot of the day with the amount of emails that we're getting. So I'm in my inbox and there's a few things that we've improved in Outlook 2013 that I'll just quickly take you through. One of those things is this feedback that we're getting around people wanting to stay within the inbox in Outlook. So we've improved a lot of the way that functionality works so that you don't need to navigate around to toolbars or into different parts of the application. For example, as I move through my emails here, you can see that I have the ability to delete them in line here from my inbox just by clicking on this delete icon, like that. Likewise, when I'm in an email itself on the preview pane here, you can see I can choose to reply or forward any of those common commands directly from within the email preview pane itself. It just saves me having to go back to the ribbon and choosing these commands from the ribbon as I would have in the past. Another great feature we built in is the ability to reply to an email and have the draft sitting in line in your inbox. So if you're anything like me, quite often I was halfway through sending an email and I'd get a phone call and I'd take the phone call and then I'd click around in my inbox to be talking about whatever it was on the call, and then 15 minutes might pass, I'd hang up and then I'd go off to lunch and I'd forget all about the email that I was in fact desperately trying to send earlier, until a few weeks from now when perhaps I looked in my folders and saw that there was a draft sitting there and got the shock of my life when I realized I hadn't sent that email at all. Now, that can't happen because sitting here in my inbox, you can see is a big red word telling me that there's a draft attached to this particular email in my inbox. And when I go back down there it is, the email that I started to craft earlier, and now I can simply hit send. So in my inbox today, I've got an email that I actually sent to myself with a document attached. What I wanted to do was share this document with my team. It's about 15, 16 of us in my team. The normal way I do that, of course, is simply to forward this email with the document attached to all those staff members. But that causes some issues. With the number of devices people have, they start having the copy of that particular email on their phone, they have it on their portable laptop, they have it on a desktop, maybe a tablet. And each of those people makes an edit to the document and then forwards it on to the same people. And then infinitely number of copies of the document are living around in everyone's inbox, and no one's really sure which the latest version is. What companies are looking for is that one source of truth, the ability to have true collaboration and control of a document by keeping it on a platform where it's the single document being accessed by lots of people. We have the ability to do that with some of the functionality that I'm going to show you. So rather than forwarding the email, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually drag and drop this document into a folder here under the Northwind Traders folder, which is one of our customers, and I'm going to dump it in the documents folder there. Now I'm going to tell you what's happening with that in a moment. In the meantime, I'm just looking in my inbox. I've got some emails here from a gentleman by the name of Alex, who's one of my colleagues. Now as I click on Alex's email, I'm actually going to open that up. You'll notice that there are some colors and some little dots next to my name and his name. The fact that he's got a yellow line next to his name there is an indication of his presence, and that's the integration with a product called Microsoft Lync. Presence is the ability to help me see somebody's availability and help me make the smartest decision about how to contact that particular person. So in Alex's case, the fact that he's yellow means that he is away from his desk. He's not physically actively using his device. And if I hover over that, I'll be able to see that in fact he's been away for 10 minutes, and I get some other information there about his title and some other things. If I click down further, I get even more information about his email address and his contact details. As I'm looking at Alex's status here, I notice that all of a sudden he's become available. So that's great. I now know that perhaps I can actually give him a phone call or an instant message or a video call, which are all options that are available through Lync. And I can do that directly by choosing the commands here. So in the case of Alex, I might want to say, "Hi Alex, are you free?" And Alex will get that instant message and he'll be able to type back saying, "Yes, I am." So whilst Alex does that, there we go. We can now easily turn this into a voice call simply by clicking on the call button, and that now escalates it to a voice call with Alex. And again, very simply, we can turn that into a video call as well simply by hitting the video button down here. Now I'm not going to do this in this case because I'm actually using both devices. So that's the power of presence and the ability to help you make the best decisions about how to contact people. Of course, if Alex was busy or in a meeting, his status would say that. It would be red, so I'd know straight away that he was in a meeting or busy, and it would help me make the right decision about how to contact him. For example, if he was busy, then I'd know that it's probably no point in giving him a phone call because he's not going to answer. If he was in a meeting, then there's probably no point me going over to his desk because he's not going to be there. So Lync helps you make smart decisions about how to contact those people. So let's get back to the document that I was sharing with my friends. What I've done here is I've copied it down into a documents folder in my Outlook, and there it is sitting here, along with a whole bunch of other documents. Now these documents actually live in a SharePoint document library, in a central source where everybody can access them and I can share them and we can have a true collaboration type experience. These copies of the document here are actually sitting on my PC, if you like. They're actually synchronized into Outlook directly themselves. So whether I'm online or offline is not all that important. I'd still be able to access these documents even though they may live on a SharePoint site, which could be internal in my own company's network, or it could be a SharePoint online installation in something like Office 365 in the cloud. In any case, like I said, because of the synchronization, because of the offline ability with Office and our back-end services, the online and offline thing doesn't really matter to me too much from a day-to-day perspective, because I can still access all these documents in the offline environment, and when the PC goes back online, of course, those documents would sync back up to that online source. So just to prove to you that I'm not lying about where these are, I'm going to open up in the web browser this particular document library, and you'll see here that it's going to open up into SharePoint, and that very document that I just uploaded from Outlook will in fact be sitting here in the document library. So there it is, and the little new status there indicates that that's the one I've just uploaded. So some people talk about SharePoint, and I've seen customers talk about the cloud and think that it's a steep learning curve to be able to get users to use cloud facilities or use a product like SharePoint. But as you saw, what I just did then was used Outlook, an application that's very familiar to a lot of people, and I was able to easily communicate with a product like SharePoint, whether, as I said, on-premise or in the cloud. It doesn't matter either way. This was just a really easy way to integrate with that, or to communicate with that technology, if you like, but not actually need to learn anything new as a user. I simply dragged and dropped a document into a folder in Outlook. But what I really did in the background was uploaded it here to SharePoint. Now the document being in SharePoint gives me a fair few great features that I wouldn't have had if I simply forwarded around in email. One of those things is that, I'm sitting here on a SharePoint site that's actually a collaboration point, if you like, for this particular customer of ours, Northwind Traders. So here I've got a project timeline, I've got all the relevant documents for this particular customer, and I've also got a news feed where I can start a conversation. I can say things like check out the new review, and that's going to give like a newsfeed type ability here for other people to see. And you can see the integration with Lync again within the browser here. My status is green, and I can hover over and I can get that same Lync integration directly from within the browser. So a very powerful tool that integrates throughout all the Microsoft productivity tools. The important thing about getting documents on a platform like SharePoint is that not only can I collaborate internally here with my staff, but I can actually share this easily with our external customer. So in this case, Northwind Traders would be a very powerful thing for me to be able to give them access to this internal site that we use in our business to provide the services and products to Northwind Traders. So I could easily go in here and enter somebody's email address from Northwind Traders. Let's say Fred. And basically he'll get an email as long as that particular email address that he's using is a Windows Live ID, and if it isn't, he can certainly set it up as one. Then that's what will authenticate him back to the website here, and all of a sudden my customers and I can collaborate in this one particular point of view, if you like, on the SharePoint site. So very, very powerful. Now I'm just going to flick over to another SharePoint feature, and that's a feature called SkyDrive Pro. So SkyDrive Pro is basically my personal area to store all my work documents. So in the old days, if you like, that might have been an F drive or an S drive on your local company server. You'd access that through internet, through the File Explorer in Windows. But now we're looking at, again, at using the same technology to be a file store for the people within your business. The advantage being that when it's on a platform like SkyDrive or SharePoint, again, it gives staff the ability to collaborate and to share the documents, and also to access the documents from anywhere, from any device that can access this particular SharePoint site. So in Katie's case, here's a bunch of documents here, and I just want to show you again the real ease of using products like SharePoint, of using the cloud, if you like, from your customer's perspective. Here's a document. Here's a PDF document that I want to perhaps drag onto my desktop to have a local copy of it for some reason. There's no steep learning curve here with how to use SharePoint. I can simply click and hold and drag that product, that file, onto my desktop. Again, dropping and dragging is something that users have been able to do for a long time. So that's how good that SharePoint and the new versions of Internet Explorer on Windows 8 have become with usability. It's very, very familiar interface, and the way things work are very familiar for users. In this case, this is a PDF that I've just dropped and dragged, so I'm going to open that up in the default Windows 8 PDF reader. And here it is. What I've noticed is that our marketing department have actually made a terrible error here. They've listed a model of television that's no longer available. Now, I'd love to be able to edit this, but of course it's a PDF, so I can't do any editing in this particular PDF reader. But I really desperately want to send this out to my customers. So one of the things that we've built into Word is a great feature that's called PDF Reflow, which gives us the ability to actually be able to open and edit PDF documents. So in this case, I'm going to open up that PDF document, and Word's going to come and tell me that, oh, it's a PDF, would you like me to make it editable? In which case I'm going to say yes. And here's that very same PDF document we were just looking at. The only difference now is that I can actually go here to the table, and I can remove this particular column now to get rid of that television. I can also go in and edit other things that I want to, and so on. I'm now able to go in, and something that I've been able to do in Word for the last few versions is now create or export that as a PDF file again. So I'm going to say that's the edited document, and I'll just publish that, and it will open up in the PDF reader for me again, and you can see there's my edits. The column's gone and the words that I put in are there. So I was very easily able to edit a PDF document, something that's been quite difficult and taken a lot of time and effort to do in the past. Now again, if I just show you the usability of SharePoint and the ease of use for users, there's the edited document here that I've just created. If I want to put that back on my on my SkyDrive, so that I can easily access it, again, it's just a matter of dragging and dropping that in the browser, and that has now uploaded into SharePoint and is sitting there for me. So very, very simple, no steep learning curve. Right, so now that I've copied that document into SharePoint, I'm just going to minimize that, and I'm going to do some more work today in Excel. What we know about Excel is that it is one of the most prevalent business intelligence tools for small businesses. A lot of small businesses use tools like MYOB and Quicken and other line of business applications, which do some level of data analysis within those applications, but inevitably most people export data from those applications and do some serious analysis using Microsoft Excel. So here's a spreadsheet that I have with some of our sales data that's come from our line of business accounting application. So I'm going to open that up in Excel 2013, and you can see there's a bunch of tabs, but here is a tab that has exported some of our customer names and some information about those customers, including the suburb, state and country within which they live. Now the issue here, which happens quite a lot, is when you export data from some of the third-party systems, it doesn't necessarily come into Excel exactly how you'd like it. So in this case, what I was hoping to do was to be able to do some analysis around particular countries that our customers have come from. But when I try and filter on this list, of course, because the state, suburb and country are all in the same field, it's very difficult for me just to choose the countries here to filter down on, which is quite frustrating. Now this spreadsheet has about 18,000 lines, so the idea of sitting here and typing out these data points into 3 separate columns is a little bit overwhelming for me. But having said that, that's what some people have to do. They might might get somebody to dedicate a week to going out and putting this data in a format that actually makes it work for them. Another thing I could do if I was a little bit of an Excel power user is perhaps use a feature called text to columns, which may be able to break these data points up for me. But in Excel 2013, it's even easier just for the lay Excel 2013 user to be able to get the data to do what they want. So I'm going to create a new column called suburb, and another one called state, and another one called country. And essentially what I want to do is just sort of start typing in how I'd like to see this data. So really I'd like Rockhampton to be in this column, if I can spell it correctly, and in the next column I'd like that to be Bremerton. And you can see here what Excel's doing is using a feature called flash fill. It's using some logic to actually try and guess what I'm trying to do and then automatically fill in the columns for me. So in this case, it's realized that I'm just taking that first piece of data and putting it into a separate column. So I'm just able to press enter and it's able to fill all that data in for me. So if I go to the second row and do the same thing, here I'd like to have the state. So I'm going to have Queensland, and then I want Washington, and Excel does the same thing again for me and breaks that data out into there. And lastly, Australia, United States, and again flash fill magically fills all that data for me. Again, 18,000 columns or rows of data easily and quickly broken apart into 3 different data points here within a matter of 30 seconds. So flash fill, a great feature, certainly very useful for a lot of people. But let's go beyond flash fill. Let's talk about analyzing data. Now again, it's very familiar to look at data in tables like we're looking here in Excel and try and make sense of that data. But really us humans, we're quite visual people and we like to look at data in a visual way. It's much easier to make sense of it in that form, especially if we're presenting the data to other people who aren't necessarily experts across what the data might be. Giving it to them in a visual form makes it much easier to consume. What I'm going to do to help visualize this data is I'm going to go to my sales tab and I'm going to insert a Power View report. So Power View is a tool within Excel that helps us make better sense visually of the data and build nice, compelling looking reports. So by default it's brought up this table, which I don't particularly want, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to build my own table. So really all as I want in this report is I'm interested in information by city and state and sales to see how much we've been selling in each of those cities and states. And also I'm interested in breaking up by gender. And lastly, I'd just like to filter that by country as well. So I'm going to add that to the filter view, and I'm just interested in Australia. And here it is in a nice table. Still, I don't really want to look at tables, so I'm going to choose a column graph to have a look at that information. Here we go, nice and easily. You can see that's built out a column graph for me, which gives me information here about the cities and states in Australia and the makeup of male versus female sales. Now I can drill down and cut this data up in different ways and get more information. But what I can even easily do is build this into something more compelling again. So let me just highlight this report, and now I want to turn it into a map. I'd love to plot this out on a map of Australia so I can really get some great visual information about where this data sits geographically. So here we go, you can see it's building this map out now with that same information, and I'm really able to get some insight now into maybe where there's some opportunity in our business based on the buying trends of our customers. So I can see that in a lot of the cities and suburbs that we sell in, certainly the female audience seems to be predominant. But if I have a look up here in somewhere in Queensland, here we go, Rockhampton for example, we've got quite a high male ratio. So perhaps there's some marketing to be done to our female customers there in Queensland. I can zoom in and I can get some real good insights into this data now because I can look at it in this visual format on a map. That was very easy for me to do. And the way that works, by the way, again, is using the power of the cloud by going up to our Bing mapping services, looking at the data that we have in our geographic data in our data that we have, and being able to use the Bing mapping services to put it into Excel for you. So I'm going to go even one further than that. I'm going to just close this and open up a new Excel file. Now the data I was analyzing there, of course, was data that I had internally within my business. What about if I wanted to analyze some data that I don't have, but I know that that particular data would help me make some great decisions in my business? So in my case, Katie's board, my board, has asked me to think about where in the United States might be a great opportunity for us to go and open up a store and sell our security products. Now, that does sound like a great opportunity, but I've got no information about the US market, whereabouts would be a great start for us in the US. So within Excel, I'm going to use a feature called Power Query, and I'm actually going to be able to search for that sort of information directly from public data sources online. So in this case, I'm going to type in USA crime data, and Excel is going to go out, look at those publicly available data sets for me and bring back some results. And you can see it's done that very quickly, and as I hover over these, it's actually giving me a preview of those data sets. So you can see the source here is from Wikipedia for some of these, and as I scroll down, in fact all the data sets here are Wikipedia in this result. Here is something that looks fairly inviting. 2011 data, United States cities. It's got the state and the city and all the different crimes there. So I'm going to select that data, and it's now going to bring it from that online source into Excel for me. So there it is. Now I have the opportunity to massage this data a little bit to the way it suits me. So again, I'm going to use the filter and shape feature here to go in, and one of the things I've noticed again is that the city and state here is stuck in the same column. Now I'd really like to break that apart, so I'm just going to split that column by delimiter and say OK, and that's now split it into two for me. So I'm going to just rename this one and just call it city, and then I'm actually going to delete this column here altogether because I've already got the state over here anyway, so I don't need that state. So that's now massaged the data a little bit in the way that I want it. What it was doing though as I was doing that is recording those steps that I just took, because it's actually creating a live connection to that data from the data source on the web for us. So I can refresh that data at any time to get the latest information, but rather than have to go through those 3 steps again that I just did to make the data in the format that I'd like it, Excel will automatically apply those steps every single time I refresh the data. So I only need to do that once. So that's terrific. I've been able to do that, and I've now got all this great data here, including some data around robbery and property crime and things like that. Again, I'm stuck in a table. What I really like to do is see this in a visual format. So I'm going to insert a new feature here called GeoFlow map. So I'm going to launch GeoFlow. And again, this is going to give me the option to view this data on a map in a 3D type environment here to help make much more sense of it. So all I need to tell GeoFlow here is give it the geographic data in my table that I want it to plot. So in this case, I'm going to say city and state, and it's mapping it here correctly. So I'm just going to say map it. And now on our 3D map, if I rotate around here to the USA, you'll start to see that it's plotted out those locations here in the US for me. So all it's done at this point is basically tag those locations here with the little red dots. But now is where it starts to get really interesting, and I can start adding data to this map. So in this case, I'm interested in property crime. So I'm going to hit the property crime, and you'll see here, if I just move the legend out of the way, it starts mapping this really nicely and visually in this 3D environment directly here within Excel 2013. I can zoom in, I can get all sorts of great perceptions on the views of this data as it sits on a map. I can add another field as well, so perhaps property crime, and maybe we'll go for burglary as well, and I can choose to cluster those together. And again, I can really now zoom in and get some good information here around perhaps where the opportunity is for my business based on where these stats are telling us to have a look. I've only got 5 minutes before the board want me to present this, and I'd like to be able to tell them a little bit of a story with this data. So what I'm going to do is just add a scene to this particular data here. And I'm going to have a look, and I've determined by analysing this thoroughly over the last 60 seconds that there's a big opportunity for us right here at this particular town, which is St. Paul, Minnesota, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. So what I'm going to do is right click, and I'm going to add an annotation here saying, here is our opportunity. Alright, I'm just going to make that maybe red and a little bit bigger and bold. There we go, that's great. So that's what I want to do, and I'm also just going to add a chart here to this map. I'm going to bring it up here, let's make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to click on here. Okay. So now I've got this view here, and I've got a second to go with the board, and I'm in there now presenting to them. All I need to do is say play tour, and now I can say, ladies and gentlemen of the board, here is our data in the USA which I've analysed, and based on my analysis what I've determined is that our best opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, is here in Minnesota, Minneapolis. Thank you very much. And you can see how powerful that visualization is in Excel of this data, and how I'm able to do that as a fairly Excel novice user with some tools that, you know, really up until maybe only a few months ago were very powerful tools only available to big business and big business intelligence applications. So that's the end of this demonstration. Thank you very much.